What is a low-key privilege that people often take for granted? And by people, I'm referring to myself. I think it's being able, or the privilege of being able to have kids in your mid-20s. And hear me out. Before we go on to speak about the topic which you've seen from the title of the video, which is something to do with the raise of older moms in our society, I do want to give a trigger warning to people who find this subject about being a mother quite sensitive, because I'm not trying to take you down that route, because I know that some people aren't mothers, or some people put off being a mother to a later stage, and that's really not in their control, or rather it's not by choice. But anyway, I truly think in hindsight, when I was like in my mid-20s, I am now in my late 20s. When I was in my mid-20s, I kind of felt like, yeah, I'm too young for a child. But now when I look back, I'm just like, yeah, people who got to have kids in their early 20s and in their mid-20s, I'm just like, I wish that, I low-key wish that was me. And I know this is not true for everyone. So yeah, let's get into the topic as I do my makeup with you guys. It's becoming a thing that throughout society and in the world, people, or women rather, are leaving having children up until like a later stage in their lives. Not only that, people are just having fewer children these days as opposed to like back in the days. I was actually listening to a podcast where they were having this conversation about women leaving having children up until a later stage in their lives. And later stage in their life, I'm referring to like your early 30s to your mid 30s. I know to us, it might seem like 30, like you are so young, when like 30s, mid 30s, early 30s, like that's considered fairly young. But when you look generations back, in our mothers' times, like they had children at quite a young age. Some of them, when they reached, the age 30 and their mid 30s, like they were done having kids. So times have changed. And you notice that obviously with the development of education, that people are becoming much more equipped about stuff like prevention, egg freezing, and people are leaving, becoming a mother to a later stage, because like we just want better, like people just want better for their kids. The whole concept of like your kid is gonna eat whatever you eat like isn't good enough, because you want to be able to provide a cushion for your kids, that when they do arrive, you are able to afford them a lifestyle that you were not granted. The reason why I view being able to have kids like in your mid-20s as a privilege in a sense. And I know, guys, like I know that in your mid-20s, like there's so much that you're figuring out with your life. Like you are, like today when you look at it, like you are fairly young to be having a kid at your mid-20s. But I look at people who are like able to dress matchy with their kids, and I'm just like, oh damn. I know to some people that's like a childish reason, but that's like not my main or only reason. But just the privilege of being able, or being young, being young, having the energy, figuring out like life with like your child there. Like I really wish sometimes that I would have had that privilege of being able to mature and grow old and figure out certain things, like with my bestie, and being at an age where like I can kind of still relate to my bestie in a sense because of the age gap between us. And I know you're still able to do that at whatever age. I don't know. I just feel like once you get, like if you have kids, or if I was able to have kids at least in my mid-20s, and then get done having kids like in my early 30s, and just focus on like me, focus on like, just like completely focus on me and like raising like my kids. in my mind, I find it much more appealing and I find it much more orderly, as opposed to like still figuring out having kids like in my early 30s or in my mid 30s, having kids. Like, yeah, like you get what I'm saying, right? But these days, guys, and I'm not saying everyone, but like people are not that hasty to have kids like before, you know? People are not hasty to have kids like before. There's so many factors that like goes into play and goes into like your head, obviously if that's in your control, that were like foreign to our forefathers. But I do actually want to know, because especially for people who had like one kid like in their mid 20s and then had like their last kid or their second kid like in their late 20s or in their early 30s, like do you feel like there's a shift mentally in having kids like at an early age as opposed to having kids at a later age? Like which one do you feel was a lot more flexible? Because another thing that someone maybe might oppose with having kids in your mid 20s is the financial aspect of it. That majority of us in our mid 20s, we are still trying to find like our feet, and in terms of finances, we are still like trying to gather our finances. So perhaps a con of having kids in your mid 20s is that you're not able to provide them the lifestyle that you really want or desire for them, because your finances are not together, as opposed to like having kids at a later age when at least you have some of your ducks in a row and you have that security there for them by the time they come into the world. But is finance everything, guys? I don't know. Like tell me, like is finance everything? Like if you like putting off kids till a later age due to economical factors, do you think like it's a reasonable reason? And let's say you get to your 30s, your early 30s, your mid 30s, and you're still not where you want to be in terms of finances. Do you think finances is like a valid reason for putting off kids? Or do you feel like you should have kids whenever like you want to and whenever you feel ready, and finances is gonna find you along the way? I think as people we're different, and it depends like how much you can take in like mentally, because for some people like it would harm them mentally bringing their kids into a situation where they aren't able to give them the lifestyle they want to, and yet the kids around them are living that lifestyle. I don't know. Tell me what you think. One of the reasons I think we are seeing the rise in people putting off kids up until a later stage, besides economical factors, and the reason why people are like having fewer children, is because how much should I say technology? Yeah, how much technology has advanced in terms of like the fertility department. These days, you actually even have the option of freezing your eggs. So back then in the days, you knew that if you are going to put off having kids at a later stage, that your chances of even having kids were just gonna get slim, which is true, it's factual. But these days you are now able to, let's say you're in your late 20s, you are able to take your eggs, and they take those eggs and they basically go and freeze those eggs. And then come the age at, like, let's say you're 60 and you now feel like you are ready to have kids at the age 60. That egg that you actually put away, you would then have the fertility rate of a late 20-year-old, or as you'd have the fertility rate as a person who's in their late 20s. Like how crazy is that? Like how amazing is that? Like I'm sure if you take someone who was like one of our forefathers and you told them that factor that you can actually freeze eggs now, like mind-blowing. But I'm grateful that technology has advanced. But I do think the advancement of technology and also the advancement of education around these things are making women much more equipped and making women be in a position to be able to make informed decisions. Now you don't feel like you have to rush to have kids. I mean, don't get me wrong, in certain parts of society they still put pressure on women to rush to have kids because they're like, you're getting older and don't do, and like a whole lot of things. But like technology has advanced that women are not put in that awkward situation, or some women, because not every woman, guys, can afford to actually go through a process of like egg freezing and all of that. Africa as a whole still has like really high numbers in terms of women giving birth as opposed to different parts of the world. But according to research, it is said that the numbers are actually falling down even in parts of Africa. Another aspect is education, that it is said that because women now obviously we are living in a society where women are liberated in a sense, and where women are able to further their education, and where women are able to pursue the careers that they want. Because of that, and because women just want to advance and grow in their careers, that's one of the reasons why women would leave having kids up until a later stage. Some people feel like having children is going to slow you down, and I do think to a certain point, though we are afraid to admit it, having kids, guys, comes with its own sacrifices. Yeah, so I honestly don't judge women who feel as if having kids will slow them down in terms of their career path and in terms of their advancement in their career. Another reason why I feel like women are leaving having children up until a later stage is because as we are growing in our knowledge, it is becoming more acceptable to not want to have kids. Back in the days, it was like a taboo. If a woman said she didn't want to have kids, it was like, how selfish are you? Like a woman's existence is to have kids. So the pressure of having kids isn't as much as opposed to our forefathers, or do you still say forefathers for women? Because in my head, I'm like, forefathers is both women and men. Like, that's what I've been trying to say all along. So I think the pressure isn't as much, and because the pressure isn't as much, then I think it's not something that is playing in the forefront of your mind. When I was younger, there was the stigma around having kids at an older age. It was not viewed as like a good thing. Like having kids at an earlier age was viewed as you fertile. Until today, guys, there are some communities and some tribes that actually, where men actually will not marry you up until you prove to them that you're able to have kids. So having kids at an early stage was like proof that you are able to like give birth. It was like proof that you fertile. So back then, when I grew up, like leaving kids up until a later stage, or having kids up until a later stage, was just like, you are just lowering your chances of someone even considering like going that mile with you, of marrying you. In some parts of society, you'd find that women who actually have kids are actually have much more chances of actually getting married and being in a committed relationship in a sense, as opposed to a woman who doesn't have children, because it's like, it was a taboo. But not only that, not only like not having children at like young, or not being able to have like kids at a young age was a taboo. If you actually saw a woman who was actually like and considered an elder and was pregnant, it was considered such a shameful thing. It was considered like, if you saw a 40-year-old, and I know there's still some cultures that actually subscribe to this, if you saw a 40-year-old who was pregnant, it was like, aren't you a bit old, ma'am, to still like be busy in those type of affairs? It was considered a very shameful thing, because like, it was almost as if it was left for young people. I don't know why we grew up with the mindset that the older you get, like, it's a shameful thing to like have proof that you are busy in sexual activities, even though you were married. It was not a beautiful thing. These days, like, if you happen to have kids, or some parts of society, guys, if you're able to have like kids in your older age, like it's such a beautiful thing, you know. But when I was growing up, it was like, it was a shameful thing. You were viewed as a woman. And I remember thinking this, that if you were an elderly woman or considered old and you had kids, it was like, oh, like, why aren't you leaving like those activities to younger people? Like you are past your age to like be considering like even having kids. So I definitely think, guys, that we are living in interesting times where people are able to, you know, make decisions, or women especially are able to make decisions based on what they feel is fit for them, and not having to feel the pressure of doing something just because, you know, just because that's what's expected of them. It's even much more awkward when you are a married woman, because you have your in-laws the side, and sometimes people are coming from like a good place, but especially elderly people, they don't understand the concept of women like wanting to leave children up until a later stage. I know there's actually some people who actually think it's selfish. It's selfish. And I actually saw this TikTok, guys, a while back, and this woman I can't remember like how old she was, but she was basically talking about how she hates her kids. That time she has 3 kids, and she was talking about how much she hates her kids, and people were like judging her and saying that like, how do you have like 3 kids and like suddenly like hate your kids? And you know, she was a bit honest, but reality is that there's just some people that I don't even know like what factors go into people like not like feeling like motherhood is not for them, but people are people, right? And we are different as people. But I do think one of the reasons why you'd go to the extent of having like 3 kids, because to me, in my mind, I'm just like, if you truly didn't enjoy being a mother, you would have at least figured that out upon your first child, you know, not child number 3. As I mentioned, that education around fertility, education around prevention, education around being able to freeze your eggs was not available and was not at the disposal of some people, and they were not able to make informed decisions. And some people are sitting with kids and they quite frankly hate being mothers. I am happy to see the rise of older moms in our society by choice. I'm glad about that, but at the same time, I'm just like, I low-key wish that in my mid-20s that I had the privilege of being in a setup where I was married, I was financially well off and was able to have kids, and be in my early 30s, mid-30s, where I'm just like focusing on like raising kids and like focusing then like on just like developing my body without the worry of that I still have to give birth to children and still like work on my body all over again. You get what I'm saying, right? But yeah, I think I'm gonna end off this conversation here. I found it quite interesting. If you are comfortable sharing and you don't have children as yet, are you low-key me, where you like, I low-key wish that I had the privilege of having kids at a younger age? Or are you just like, girl, like having kids is like the last thing in my mind, and you know what, God willing, we'll see where it takes. I'll see as time goes along. But please do make sure that you like this video before you exit it. Please do make sure that you subscribe. You'll notice when I say the word subscribe, like down there, if you're unsubscribed, it will like have like a rainbow sort of like effect going on there. So please do make sure that you subscribe. It is for free of charge if you haven't. And yeah, I guess I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.